Hey guys, Antoine Martel here, and I'm going to show you math that makes you money. I'm going to show you guys how to go and calculate single-family houses. I'm going to show you how to run numbers on single-family homes across the country, no matter where they are, the easy way. So a lot of people, when running numbers on single-family houses, tend to complicate the process, but I want to break the numbers down for you guys super easily. So you guys literally with the back of a napkin can go and run numbers for a single family house that you see online. So we're gonna go through the entire process. I'm gonna show you guys exactly step by step how to go out there, analyze a single family house rental property so that you guys can do it too. But before we get into the video, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel because my goal is to help you guys go out there, analyze these single family houses, make offers, and by showing you guys exactly how I do it, it's gonna make you guys go out there and be able to make these offers way quicker than you could before. Now, one of the reasons why I'm gonna focus on single family homes versus apartment buildings or duplexes or fourplexes is because single family homes are so much easier to run the numbers for. And that's why when beginners come to me and ask me about investing in real estate or trying to buy their first property, I always recommend they start off with single family houses because first of all, the numbers are easier, and second of all, it's way easier to get involved. Much less capital involved to go and buy a single family house versus buying even a duplex or fourplex, and especially a 10, 20, 30, 40 unit apartment building. All right, so let's get started. So the first and most important thing that I always look at when analyzing a rental property is looking at the cash flows of a rental property. This is gonna be the most important piece of the rental property is the cash flows that it produces. Because based on the cash flows that are produced from the single family house, then we can run some other calculations, ROI, ROE, cap rate, all these other kinds of things. But first, we need to figure out what the property cash flows, then we can do that math later on. Now the cash flows are gonna represent all the income and all the expenses for the rental property. And then at the end, we're gonna see what the net cash flows are, which is gonna be what we make every single month on that rental property. And the top line of all of these cash flows for any kind of rental property, no matter what it is, single family house or multifamily, is always gonna be the rent. The rent is always gonna be the top line, the income for that rental property. Sure, for bigger apartment buildings, you'll have like laundry income and stuff like that. But here, we're just focusing on single family houses, and the number one income revenue generator is gonna be rent. So let's say that you went and found a house online, right? You found one on Zillow or Redfin. It's worth 120K or 100,000 bucks, and that's what they're asking to sell the property for. And let's say that the house is currently occupied for 1,000 bucks a month, or you go check some comps and you see that you could rent that house out for 1,000 bucks a month. So we're gonna kind of use that as the placeholder rent amount number just to make everything super easy. So now because this is a single family house, let's just say there's no other income, which there probably won't be for most single family houses out there. And let's get into the expenses. So the number one expense that I always look at is gonna be the property taxes. So property tax, every single house in America is gonna have property tax. So I think it's pretty safe to assume here, just for this example, that the property taxes is gonna be about $100 a month. And how do you find this number? It really depends. You can ask your realtor, they can kind of look it up for you. If you have access to the MLS, it also shows in the MLS how much the property taxes are per year. You take that number divided by 12 to get this number. Also on Zillow, they have a little property tax area, which has pretty accurate tax information, especially if you're just doing back of the napkin kind of numbers. You can start there as well with the property on Zillow and look for the property tax information, pull that number out and put it right here. Now keep in mind, we're just going through the cash flows of the property. We'll obviously get into the purchase price of the property, the down payment amount, all that other kind of stuff later on in the video. So trust me, we're just gonna do the cash flows first, then we'll work on the purchase price of the property later on. So the next item on this cash flow spreadsheet, the next expense that we're gonna have is gonna be property insurance. Every single house, I would highly recommend you get insurance on the property. And normally property insurance for all the properties that we do out in the Midwest is normally 500 to 1,000 bucks per year. So for this number, let's just put a nominal number of $50 a month, again, to make the math super easy. Now the next expense is an expense that I would highly recommend you spend your money on, and that is gonna be the property management fee. And so the way that property managers make money is they take a percentage of the rental income every single month. And most property management companies managing single family houses in the Midwest will charge 10%. 10% of 1,000 bucks a month is $100 a month in property management expenses. Now, a lot of people try to go and manage their houses from across state lines, thousands of miles away. I would not recommend you try to manage your property from that far away. I would highly recommend spending that money, spending the 10% of your collected income, because they only make money when rent is collected. So if a tenant doesn't pay rent 1 month, they don't make their money. So they're really incentivized to keep the tenants in there, paying rent, and keeping you happy. All right, so now that we have all these numbers, the rent, taxes, insurance, property management, we're ready to calculate our net operating income. So for single family houses, the reason why I love them so much is because you don't have to worry about utilities on these properties, because the tenants pay for all the utilities. So with our NOI calculation, which is what we'll do next, because this is how you calculate the NOI. The NOI stands for the net operating income, and net operating income does not include the debt service, and no utilities are included because this is a single family house. So now with these numbers here, we can calculate what the NOI for the single family home is. And if you do the math, you'll come up with $750 per month in net operating income every single month for this property. And the reason why you calculate the NOI is it makes it easier to compare a single family house with a duplex, with a multifamily, because all of the properties will have an NOI. The net cash flow per month is going to include financing, but financing can vary from property to property, property type to property type. So that's why we like to calculate the NOI. It also helps us calculate the cap rate, which is what we'll get into later. All right, so now that we have the NOI, our goal is to get to the net cash flow. And then with the net cash flow, we can start doing some other calculations like ROI, ROE, and then we could also look at the cap rate of the property. And with those numbers that we calculate, we'll use those numbers to compare this investment to other investments that we start to analyze later on. So first and foremost, we have to look at the purchase price of the property. I'll use those two letters. The purchase price is going to be $100,000. And with the purchase price being $100,000, most banks for single family houses will want you to put 20% down. So your down payment is going to be $20,000, which is going to be 20%. For duplexes, fourplexes, anything larger than 2 units, banks will require you to put 25% down. That's again why I like single family houses. The math is super easy and it requires very little amount of money down. Now, the interest rate, the going interest rate right now as it stands today is about 5% for single family house rental properties in this price range. Sure, if you get like a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 home, this rate can go down. If you live in the property, this rate can go down, but this is the going rate for buying single family home rental properties in the Midwest right now. So now the term of the mortgage or the length of the mortgage, I always recommend getting the longest term. And for Fannie Mae, the longest term that they offer, and this is a Fannie Mae loan, is going to be a 30-year term. There are other terms available for like 15 years or 10 years. That just means the length of the loan. And the longer the length of the loan, the lower the monthly payments are. And the lower the monthly payments are, the higher the net cash flow number is going to be, which is super, super important. Because if something does go wrong with the property, you have to replace a hot water tank or you have to do any kind of maintenance item for that property, you want to have a lower debt service every single month. Even though the term is longer, it doesn't matter. You're at least going to be making some sort of profit every single month, and that's the most important. So when you take all these numbers, which is going to be $80,000 loan, interest rate of 5% over a 30-year term, we're going to get a monthly mortgage payment of $580 per month. Now, if you do the calculation, it's not exactly that. I'm just rounding up to make the numbers flow a little bit better. Now, the way that we calculate the net cash flow is going to be minusing the NOI with the mortgage payment. So the NOI that we had here is $750 a month, minus the mortgage payment of $580 a month is going to get us our net cash flow, which is how much profit we're making on the property every single month, including the debt service. So the net cash flow on this property is $170 per month. And so for most of my properties that I go out there and buy, I like this number to be as close to 200 as possible. 200 I think is a good number. It's an average number to go out there and buy a single family house and hope that it cash flows around $200 a month. Now, a lot of investors like to include what's called vacancy and maintenance reserves when running numbers on their properties. And so this is the net cash flow on a property on a perfect month, right? But what happens when the tenant leaves for 1 month and you have to clean it up, etc.? What happens if there's maintenance items on the property, like a hot water tank or flooring or painting or window repairs, right? So there's going to be those expenses over the next 30 years of owning that property. You're not going to have $170 months every single month for the next 30 years. It's just not possible. Now, let's take this property for example. Let's say we just found it online and already has a tenant in place for $1,000 a month. So we're going to budget for vacancy, maintenance, and capex. So the first one, which is maintenance, we're going to budget 5%. For vacancy, we're going to budget 5% as well. And then the last one is CapEx, or capital expenditures, which we're gonna budget 5% as well. That means we're gonna total budget of 15% of the total rent every single month, put that into a separate piggy bank. We'll remove it from the net cash flow to kind of see where we may land for the long run, because we're trying to come up with an average net cash flow for the next 30 years, and including this 15% into this number is going to make the number way more accurate when looking at a long horizon. So let's do some math. So let's take the 15% times $1,000 a month. That's going to make it be $150 a month in total reserves that we're going to put away, put aside. We're not going to do it in real life, just in our numbers when we're analyzing a deal. And then we're going to take that number, $150 a month, minus it by the $170 that we're making every single month. So minus 150 is going to give us $20 a month in net cash flow. So that means over the next 30 years, this rental property is going to make us $20 a month on average for the next 30 years, once you include vacancy, maintenance, and capex. All right, so now looking at this deal, $20 a month is not enough, right? $20 a month is pretty much breaking even on this property every single month for the next 30 years. And that's not what we want. We want to buy these properties to make money on these properties every single month. We want to make a good, solid return on these properties. There's a couple of different ways we can do that. First off, we can take the rent and increase the rent, because that's going to go directly to our net cash flow. You can just skip all the math and just put it directly down there. So let's say you talk to property management, the house you're buying is completely vacant, and they think they can rent the house out now instead of $1,000 for $1,100 a month. So let's take $1,100 a month, and we can add it right down here for the net cash flow. And then on top of that, let's see if we can make an offer on the property for, instead of $100,000, for now $90,000, which is going to change this down payment, obviously, because it's not going to be $20,000 anymore. It's going to be now $18,000 for the down payment, which is going to help our ROI at the end of the day. Interest rates are going to stay the same. Term of the loan, you want that to stay the same. Your mortgage payment now, because you have a lower loan amount, is going to go down. So now instead of it being $580, it's going to be $536. So that's going to be your monthly mortgage payment every single month. So now with all these changes that we made, increasing the rent, reducing the purchase price because we just want to make a lower offer than what they have it listed for, that's going to affect significantly our net cash flow every single month. So I'll put a new one down here. So our new net cash flow is going to be $314 every single month. So look how much of a difference that made. We went from $170 a month to now at $314. And now once we include this maintenance, vacancy, and capex, which is also going to go up a little bit because we increased the rent. So this new number for maintenance, vacancy, and capex won't be $150. It'll now be $165 a month, which is good, because now we have a little bit more of a budget for stuff to go wrong, especially over the next 30 years, because we want to hold this thing for a long period of time. So now let's take the 314 and minus it by 165, which gives us 149 every single month. And so look, just a couple little tweaks, $10,000 price difference, $100 a month extra in rent, and now we're at $149 instead of $20 a month. So now the deal is starting to look better. And look how simple the calculations are. You just need your phone calculator and you can do this math from anywhere. So now that we know our cash flow on the property, we can use that number to figure out our return on investment, or our cash on cash return. And this will look at the amount of money that we put into the down payment plus closing costs, look at the net cash flow per month, and come up with a percentage return to figure out if that deal is a good deal or a bad deal, or if we need to adjust our numbers. All right, so let's get right into it. Let's figure out the ROI and go ahead and calculate the ROI for the property that we just analyzed. And this ROI calculation, this cash on cash return calculation, is going to be most important for single family houses. So a lot of other investors look at cap rates, but cap rates don't really matter for single family houses because single family houses are not based on cap rates. So the rule is if it has 4 or less units, then it's going to be based on a cash on cash return. If it has 5 or greater units, now the value of that property is derived from its cap rate and its net operating income. But for anything from 1 to 4 units, they use values and appraised values. So we really just want to look at the ROI, the cash on cash return, versus looking at the cap rate. All right, so let's get into it. How do we come up with the return on investment? The first thing we have to figure out is how much money do we put into this deal? right? So we obviously got a loan for the property, but other than the loan, we did have a down payment, $18,000. So that was the down payment that we put down because we adjusted our offer, remember, from $100,000 to $90,000. Now, in addition to this $18,000 down payment, we'll have some closing costs for escrow, for title, for the bank fees, and those will be here, closing costs. And those will typically run you around $3,000 for a single family house that is worth about $100,000. So now when we add up both of these numbers, we're gonna come up with a total down payment, which is gonna be $21,000. So the total cash investment to buy this property is $21,000, including the down payment plus all the closing costs, which is pretty good. All in, you only need $21,000 to go out there, buy a property for $90,000 and hope it rents out for $1,100 a month. Now that we got that out of the way, we figured out how much total cash investment we're putting in. We have to figure out what the net cash flow is on the property to come up with the ROI. So after we adjusted some of the numbers with the red pen in the last example, we got a net cash flow of $314 per month. So this is the net cash flow before vacancy and maintenance. And then we had the other one, which was the net cash flow after vacancy and maintenance, which is going to be $149. Remember in the last example, we got this from $20 a month to $149 per month. Now that we have both of these net cash flow numbers, we're going to take our total down payment and figure out what the ROI is by using the calculation. So first, we have to take the net cash flow and multiply it by 12 because ROI is an annualized number, it's not a monthly number. So we have to take all of these and annualize all of them. So what you'll do is take this times 12, and you'll take this one over here and times it by 12 as well to come up with the annual net cash flow per year. So for this one, it's going to be $37.68. And for this one, it's going to be $17.88. This is going to be per year. Now that we have these annualized numbers, we're going to take that, divide it by the total cash invested, the total amount of cash that we put into this transaction, which is going to be $21,000 for both of them. We'll take it to both $21,000. And now when you divide the total net cash flow per year divided by the amount invested in the deal, you'll get the ROI. So this one will be 17.9%. And over here, we'll have 8.5%. So this gives us a really good idea of what the net cash flow is going to be for the next 30 years once you include vacancy, maintenance, and CapEx. Which is amazing because if you have a perfect year, you can be making close to 18% return on your money. And if you have an average year, including some stuff, you can be making 8.5% return on your money. And so what these numbers mean is that every single year, you'll be making a 20% return on the amount of money that you put in. So you'll take whatever amount of money you put in, times it by 0.2 or 20%, and that'll give you $4,000 a year, close to $4,000 a year that you're making on your $20,000 investment, which is a huge return, a huge number. So obviously this deal is really, really good because we modified the numbers, we increased the rent, we reduced the purchase price, but in reality, you may not be able to do both of those things simultaneously on a deal. Maybe we'll get one and not the other, but I want to set some guidelines for you so that when you're out there analyzing deals, you can kind of use these guidelines to see if a deal is a good deal or a bad deal. So first and foremost, the ROI on the net cash flow without vacancy and maintenance, we're getting 18%, which is really, really high. Most deals today that you're out there buying will be anything from 10 to 15%. I think that's a good range to stay within. I think that's going to get you significant amounts of inventory. Sure, could you find some unicorns that make 18% ROI on paper? Yes, but those deals are going to be hard to come by. I would rather you focus on some base hits that are making anything from 10 to 15%. Now, including vacancy and maintenance, the number over here, which we're getting 8.5%, that's right in the target. That's a pretty good number, and I would set a goal of being anything from 5 to 10% for this number. So this number over here is pretty good. This one is a little bit high. Now, obviously, if you could find deals like this, that's fantastic, but it's going to be very difficult to find deals that are making an 18% return on your investment when you don't include vacancy and maintenance. When I'm looking for deals personally to add to my own personal portfolio, I try to hit these exact targets. So I'll try to find a deal that has a 10 to 15% cash on cash return without including vacancy, maintenance, capex. And if a deal does hit in between this range, that's when I'll make an offer on that property, and then I go back to the drawing board and try to verify those numbers throughout my due diligence process. So please use these guidelines that I'm setting up for you. Run your numbers just like this. There shouldn't be anything else if you're running a single family home rental property across the country, but you should be finding deals anything from 10 to 15%, anything from 5 to 10% once you include the vacancy and maintenance. If you find a deal below these ROI numbers, maybe you want to adjust them, reduce your offer, see if you can increase the rent, anything you can do to make the numbers make a little more sense. And if you find a deal that's just screaming off the page, try to do a little bit more due diligence on that rent. Double check it with a realtor, with a property manager. Make sure that the crime in that area is not crazy high, because sure, I can find you some houses in some really rough neighborhoods that can show 18, 20, 25, but the thing is, can you really collect that? Can you really collect it once you include the vacancy, maintenance, and all the break-ins that that property might have? You may be way lower than this number. Use this to protect yourself. Use these calculations to protect yourself, making sure you're getting into a good deal that's going to produce an income for you. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel because I want to keep sharing with you how I analyze deals so you can go out there and buy some houses yourself. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.